Welcome to the White Sox Recap Podcast. I am Ryan McGuffey. We have been waiting and waiting and waiting for the dam to break before the Major League Baseball trade deadline Monday at 5 p.m. And it finally broke. The White Sox get out ahead of things late Saturday night and acquire Luis Castillo from the Seattle Mariners, a controllable pitcher that cost them Sir Anthony Dominguez, Boston Smith, and Nolan Jones. Yes, Sir Anthony Dominguez and his contract are headed west. Luis Castillo and his contract are coming to the Midwest as the White Sox acquire a veteran pitcher that has postseason experience and up and down 2026 for Luis Castillo. But on this edition of the podcast, we're going to hear from GM Chris Getz as to what they saw and why they acquired Castillo for the stretch run as the White Sox hit August with a 3-game lead in the American League Central. We'll hear plenty from Chris Getz about the acquisition, about why trading top 100 prospects for rentals is not in his DNA, but it could be for more control. Why the White Sox aren't done. And this team, well, according to Getz, it's just too special to break up from the Major League clubhouse. Plenty to discuss as we ramp up for the trade deadline. Plus, Tarek Skubal goes to the Dodgers. A thought or two on that on this edition of the White Sox Recap Podcast, and it starts right now.
You know, Luis Castillo, his reputation within the league is excellent. I mean, the leadership qualities, the type of teammate that he is, the work ethic. We've got people within the White Sox organization that have been with him and other organizations. And, it's really important when you're talking about a pitcher and a starting pitcher and understanding their routine between their outings and how they handle themselves on and off the field. And when you've got a young, impressionable, hungry, excited group, to be able to insert someone that is going to, represent, what a starting pitcher is, who is going to, has that experience in the postseason, I think is going to have a positive influence, within the clubhouse. Now, on top of that, someone that is not going to be scared, is a fearless competitor. The amount of people that I talk to regarding what he brings to the table in terms of being the competitor and the person. I mean, it's about as glowing as I've heard about any player. And then you put that into the impact that it can have on just the entirety of this team, this pitching staff. It just became more and more attractive, and really happy that we were able to get this deal done. We talked to Luis Castillo last night, and gosh, he was so excited. He was, and he's just ready to get going. I mean, you could hear it in his voice, and I said, listen, I can't wait to meet you in Boston. I know, Will and the players and the staff, they feel the same way. I think you're getting someone that is hungry and has an opportunity to lead, with us, and there is a need. We got a chance for this to really help the Chicago White Sox organization.
All right, welcome to this edition of the White Sox Recap Podcast. Glowing reviews from GM Chris Getz. And let's be honest, I mean, you would expect nothing more, but these guys have been scouting a player like Luis Castillo for some time. This didn't come together overnight. Luis Castillo, talked about right there with Chris Getz, as glowing of a review as any player he's discussed. Fearless competitor, not going to be scared. He's 6th in the majors in the 2020s in innings pitched. And don't think that doesn't matter coming down the stretch as the White Sox try to fend off the Cleveland Guardians and the Minnesota Twins in their pursuit of their first American League Central title since 2021. Castillo gives them a veteran presence, something this young rotation has lacked at the top. Is he a number one today? I'm not quite sure I can go there. No one asked Chris Getz that, but I'm not sure if anyone feels that. I will say, going into a postseason, you may lean on his postseason experience because he pitched in the postseason as early as last year. This is a guy that's a 3-time All-Star and comes with a very, very credible and lengthy resume for the good. Yes, his ERA is a touch above 5 this year. Some mixed bag results. He's been in the bullpen. He's been piggybacked. And Chris Getz was asked, was there something other than a change of scenery that they saw in their scouting of Luis Castillo and his 5+ ERA in 2026. Here's more.
I mean, if you're tracking the Seattle Mariners and the starters that they have, and Luis was in piggyback roles. He was, coming out of the bullpen and then, being cut short at times. And, I think that really did have, I don't know if he would admit it, but I think anyone, that's been tracking it closely and knowing how, starters are such creatures of habit and are such competitors, especially someone like Luis Castillo, that probably did have an effect on him. To what extent, I don't really know, other than the fact that when they gave him a clean starting role in that rotation, I think it was right around mid-June. Since then, I mean, it's a sub-4, it's a 3, it's in the 3 ERA level. So the production is there. The stuff grades that we have, execution, all of that, just the adjusted kind of ERA, but also just what we believe is still in there. And sure, I think that there's going to be opportunity to perhaps tweak an arsenal or something with the delivery. And I look at Zach Bove and our pitching crew and Brian Bannister and what we've been able to do with some arms. Jordan Hicks comes to mind. I know, in the offseason, acquiring Jordan Hicks on the surface, perhaps that deal didn't make a whole lot of sense. Why did they do this? And truthfully, we saw that there was still plenty of talent in Jordan Hicks, obviously in that case, getting Sandlin as well, a deal like that, and being able to unlock Jordan Hicks and the impact that he's having right now too. Now, how does that apply here? We think that there's positive adjustments that are going to have, but even at its floor, just being able to provide these innings is going to be significant for the Chicago White Sox based on the current group that we have, which is a young starting group that really hasn't provided that whole, a lot of innings. And we've got to protect the bullpen as well. The bullpen's done a really nice job, but the quickest way of taxing a bullpen is asking them to do too much and cover starter innings as well. So that was part of the calculus as well.
All right, so Luis Castillo, you go back his last 10 starts, he's got a 3.88 ERA as a starter. He's right. He was piggybacked. There were times he was taken out early. There was a time, I want to say about 6 weeks ago, he was relieved after 4 innings, and you can see he had the glove over his face. If you're watching this, I have my hand over my face, or if you're listening to it, because he wasn't happy about being taken out. Yes, let's get into the financials. He's owed $24 million this year. Next year, obviously, the Sox will pick up what's remaining on his contract. And all of next year, for those of you who say the White Sox will never add money, Chris said, there's more to come. Those conversations with Jerry, he said, this team is special, and if you feel like you want to go for it, go for it. That doesn't preclude the White Sox from making more moves. That's what Chris Getz said. They weren't interested in trading top 100 prospects for rentals. So if you want to discuss Tarek Skubal, the White Sox are in a different spot than other clubs. Now, I'm not sure the Tigers would engage with the White Sox. It would have cost probably a tax that we've talked about with crosstown tax in the past. Let's move on from Skubal for another moment here. But Getz said he didn't want to go into our top 100 prospects for a rental. I did follow up with him about the prospects because I was curious. Does that mean in the next 24 plus hours as we record this, that top 100 prospects are off the board? And I followed it, and you'll hear that here in this series, about when Chris Getz knew this team was special and that their ability to be aggressive was going to happen. Let's hear from Chris Getz first discussing top 100 prospects and the philosophy moving forward over the next 24 plus hours.
That was more applying to rentals. I don't think that would be responsible for the Chicago White Sox right now to send a top 100 prospect for a couple months. Now, is it enticing sometimes? Of course, we're competitors, and to be able to add to this particular club, sure. But really, yeah, that applied to rental pitchers. Now, when you're talking about pitchers with control, we'll look at those possibilities. Candidly, nothing has made sense. You got to look at each, trade market, each deadline, what's available. What are they trying to accomplish? And Sometimes a pitcher, with control, that might at the surface look like, oh, wow, this could really help upgrade the club. But then you do a deeper dive and perhaps, okay, that's not going to move the needle as much as you'd like, especially if you're going to use, an asset like a top 100 prospect.
At what point, obviously expectations of the club have changed, right? I mean, as we've gotten to August and you have a 3-game lead, but at what point did you start to have that frame of mind that you're going to be aggressive at the trade deadline and add to this club rather than the last couple of years? And knowing that the American League is wide open, is that kind of how you're looking at it, as an opportunity to not just get in the dance, but make an impact in it?
Yeah, I mean, it's, starting from where we began, this year to where we are now. And, I think, I've joked, it's like the one of the best things about this season is, I might have a certain feeling about the clubhouse and this team or someone else within the organization, or the best part about this is those players in there do not care. They really don't. They know that they can win, and that's when you've got something. Now, to what extent? That's where the work comes in and the decision making comes in, and it has been a long road to get where we are right now. It has, and I don't take any of this for granted. You can't assume that you're going to be in these positions every year. We do feel really good about where this club currently is and where it's going. We do. And I need to find opportunities to fuel, this group. And there's different ways of doing that. I like where our farm system is. Obviously being able to insert, a Rock Chalowski, a #1 pick, and add other talent. We've been able to build up some infield depth that at some point, we could, repurpose in other ways. Now looking around the American League, looking around the division, understanding where we sit right now, it's really about, Wayne, okay, if we were to give up this and acquire this, how far does this actually take us? And I think that oftentimes, you're in this, it's probably just a competitor or even for fans, they think that this one move or these 2 moves is going to dramatically impact, where you're going to be in the standings in the end. And unfortunately, it's not as significant as you would like it to be, but it can be meaningful. And so I say all of that because I really do want to be responsible, and with where and how we've gotten here. And so, we're measuring all these different kind of avenues to improve it. I want to fuel this team responsibly this year and position themselves to finish strong. And, we hope that we can get into the playoffs. We do. But, we also have hopes of 2027 and 2028 and feel like we're entering into a phase with this group to be able to have these conversations every deadline.
All right. So some clarity there. Some clarity there about the top 100 prospects, because Chris Getz is not saying they're off limits, but he's talking about rentals. So that's the Freddie Peraltas, the Robbie Rays, et cetera, as we come down. Now, the White Sox, according to reports, are not done. They are looking for more pitching. Chris said he expects something to happen in the catching market prior to the deadline. He doesn't know who or what or when yet, but he does expect things to happen for the White Sox to acquire a catcher. So how does the rotation get impacted? He said the plans are still being discussed. Does somebody in the starting rotation move to the bullpen? What happens to Sir Anthony Dominguez's spot? Well, we all know that Tanner McDougal and Hagen Smith have been working primarily out of the bullpen in Charlotte, and that those 2 guys are expected to come up here shortly after the deadline. You would expect one of those guys to take Sir Anthony Dominguez's place, and then that you'd find another roster move to be had. I will say this. Getz did not rule out the idea of adding another reliever. So a lot to be figured out here in the next 24 plus hours. But one thing is certain, the White Sox are aggressive. And Chris Getz knows that this opportunity, especially, you've heard him say that here on this edition of the podcast. He understands that these guys don't really care about the outside noise and that they think they can win. They had different expectations than maybe even the front office, certainly the fan base going into the season. And now we're sitting here, the White Sox, with a 3-game lead on August 2nd. A 3-game lead on August 2nd. There's not a person alive that thought that would be the case. And I don't think the White Sox are done yet. Chris Getz is saying the same thing. Now, Tarik Skubal was dealt shortly after the Luis Castillo news. It's frustrating. Yes, it's frustrating. I never thought the White Sox were involved, but it's frustrating. And I don't mind the Dodgers doing this. I've never had a problem with the way the Dodgers operate. They develop and get the most bang for their buck and spend the most than anybody in baseball. They have a unicorn TV contract, et cetera. This might be the biggest reason that there will be a labor dispute here come end of the season. Tarik Skubal goes to the Dodgers. The only problem I have with it is this. You have the best asset available at the trade deadline in years, and you trade him 40 hours before the deadline? Wouldn't you take that all the way to the end, find the most desperate team? I just don't buy that this package is the package that would have won me over. And if you look at rival execs and see the reports from guys like John Heyman, Jim Bowden, there's somebody who said this trade wasn't accepted in MLB The Show. It's just not great to me. It's not great. Now the Dodgers, they're in the National League. The White Sox if the Sox are getting beat by Tarik Skubal, okay? If the Sox are getting beat by Tarik Skubal in the World Series, that's a hat tip, and I know I'm laughing. But the White Sox did get out in the Luis Castillo trade, and I think it's a really good move for the franchise because it does have control for 2027. And yeah, we don't know. The uncertainty of 2027 is there. But one thing is certain, that he gives the White Sox more veteran depth. And they need to lighten the load off of the bullpen. Chris said that as much. There's a lot of inexperience in the White Sox bullpen right now. They have carried this team. This rotation ranks dead last in the majors in innings out of their starting rotation. And they just acquired Luis Castillo, who is 6th in the majors in innings pitched in the 2020s. As I've said, Chris Getz expects more to be done. The White Sox not done yet. He did say that with the Tarik Skubal move, that the flurries of trades, the dominoes should start to fall as soon as Sunday and certainly into Monday. I'll have as much for you as possible as the White Sox make moves. Check on YouTube Shorts, check on socials, check here on the podcast. We will be live at 4:30 on Monday, taking you through the deadline all the way to a 5:30. We'll go up to the final 30 minutes and through the deadline as we recap the White Sox and Cubs trade moves here on the recap. And then I'll get BA and possibly Hoodie involved as we break down the White Sox trade deadline. White Sox acquire Luis Castillo. We've heard from GM Chris Getz as to why he's the guy that makes sense for the White Sox and this club moving forward. I think it's a great move for the organization. And for those of you who are down on it and talking about Boston Smith is an organizational win, acquired in the Curtis Mead trade. He's had a great year defensively. He's kind of he's a catcher / outfielding prospect. The bat is real, and maybe it takes off for the Seattle Mariners down the line. But he's a 15th ranked prospect in your system, and you got him for Curtis Mead, who the Reds who played really well for the Nationals. Don't get me wrong, but Boston Smith now led you to Luis Castillo, a 28-year-old outfielder in Nolan Jones, and you got rid of Sir Anthony Dominguez, who had no spot in your bullpen because it didn't work out with him. He was not pitching meaningful innings. And so Sir Anthony Dominguez and his contract, that's headed west to alleviate some of the money you're bringing in. And if you want to do the math, he was owed 12.5 next year. Subtract that from the 24.7 or 24.2 that Luis Castillo is getting, and you're paying Luis Castillo basically $11 million more. That's the way it works out. Can't wait to see what's to come, and I'll have it for you here on the White Sox Recap Podcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to this edition of the White Sox Recap Podcast. If you don't already subscribe to the recap, click that subscribe button and click the notification bell every time we drop new episodes of the White Sox Recap Podcast. You get that notification. Stay tuned, folks. Ramped up. It should be a crazy 24 plus hours. That's the White Sox Recap Podcast. I'm Ryan McGuffey. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Take that.